Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns. Hello and welcome to Keto Life Support. This is Kim Howerton and this is episode number 66. Today it's just you and I. What's that song? Am I dating myself? Yes, I very much am. Just you and I. Right? Who was that duet? I can't even remember. I think it had Lionel Richie. Was it Sheena Easton? Anyway, anyone under the age of 40 has tuned out at this point. Anyway, so coming to you to talk about something that I've been thinking a lot about recently, which apparently I think about a lot of things a lot recently, so this could go in any direction. But one of the things that I've been thinking about was, when you first start a new diet, you tend to, or think like when you first started keto, as an example. I talked about this in a previous episode that one of the best things about keto is also one of the worst things, but let's go to the best thing, which is that it's extremely, I don't like the word rigid, but some might use the word rigid. It has very defined rules. If, you follow a strict version and, you go by the rules. And I'm just going to out myself here on this and say, when I first started keto, I really liked the rigid rules. They worked for me. And then when I started teaching about keto, I actually was pretty rigid myself. And so, forgive me for the things I said when I was stupid is what they say, forgive me for the things I said when I was hangry. Forgive me for the things that I said when I didn't know better is kind of how I feel. This is the problem with learning on the job, right? You start talking about a subject, you start learning about a subject, you start teaching about a subject, you start doing it all at once, and then you come back and you say, let me rethink that. So, bear with me. But when I first started keto, I'm definitely an abstainer, right? Some of us are abstainers, some of us are moderators in that, a moderator is someone that can just have a little of something. An abstainer is someone who's better off not having it at all. Abstainers tend to really like the rigid form of keto, at least initially, because it's a lot easier to say, well, I just don't eat 99 foods out of that list of 200, right? I just cut them off the list. It's a lot easier. Someone also pointed out to me it's actually easier to track while on keto than while on maybe what would be called a mixed diet, because the foods any processed foods, more mixed foods that involve a lot of carbs can be very challenging to track well. Whereas while this is changing as more keto products are coming on the market, it's a lot easier to track like whole foods, single item foods than it is mixed foods. Like if you go to the restaurant and you get a steak and some broccoli, you're a lot more likely to be able to estimate the macros on that, when you put it, or the amounts on that and then put it in your tracker accurately than that lasagna, right? Like how much of that? It's very hard. So there are reasons there that, keto does make it easier to track. If you don't track, it makes it easier to keep track, right? Just mentally of what you're eating. And then also it has these more rigid structures that we can borrow, right? We don't have to make as many choices. We don't get as fatigued in our decision because there are just some that are just off the table. We don't have to think, should I have a cookie or an apple? Like which one's the better choice? We're like, I don't eat carbs. I don't have cookies or apples, period, right? So you're drawing a line. And so for a lot of people, that beginning of keto was very, very helpful, that rigidity. And for most of us, when we first started keto, and this is not just keto, I'm using keto as an example. So maybe you started any diet program. If you went to somebody for that diet program, or, in the case of keto, you read a book about it, or you learned on the internet about it, you learned there was a thing and there were rules, and you want to follow the rules. And those rules give you boundaries around how you're going to act. And that can be a big relief because you're new at this and you don't yet understand maybe the science of it. You don't yet understand how to create your own boundaries, where to draw those lines. Everything is kind of up for question. And it's just like, if you, God, it's been a while, so I might get this wrong, but when I did Weight Watchers when I was like 12, there were points and there were books and you had to follow to learn the rules and how many points is this and how many points is that, right? So there are these rigid rules that you have to learn. And I think for so many people, I think for some people, they're like, screw that, I don't want to do that. But for the people that stick with it, it worked for them. They liked those rules. But what I want to point out today is that it's great to borrow boundaries while you're forming your own, but you can't live you can, but I don't recommend living your whole life that way. I don't recommend you live your life asking, is this okay? Is that okay? That you learn the parameters of what is okay for you. Or, because something you might do great with dairy for a while, and then suddenly you're like, maybe not dairy, right? So the parameters can change, but how do you evaluate your parameters? How do you evaluate your boundaries? How do you evaluate choices? There is not a single person that I can think of that has been successful long-term with becoming a healthy, lean, happy person who didn't become their own health expert at some point. I will see in many Facebook groups, people who have been in Facebook groups for a long time, still very confused, right? Somebody will say, I can't eat dairy. And then you'll see a response like, what? We're not allowed to have dairy? Oh my gosh, I thought we were allowed to have dairy. It's like, no, this person doesn't do well on dairy. I'm picking on dairy. I don't know why. Or, this other person will say, well, I don't eat almonds. And people are like, oh my gosh, well, I thought we could have almonds. We can't have almonds. The person's like, I'm allergic to almonds, so I'm not having almonds. So again, you have to be cautious about giving up your power. Now, you can lend it, right? Like I said, you can be like, I'm new here. I need someone to show me the ropes. I'm going to follow your lead. You're leaning on somebody, right? It's just like using crutches. The goal of using crutches is not to stay on crutches. The goal of using crutches is to heal whatever needs to be healed so you can stand on your own. So learning somebody else's rules around keto or, just eating healthily, right? I mean, eating healthy for your body is the ultimate goal. There's no prize for staying keto, for not staying keto, for anything. The prize is your health. And so I would say always focus on your health over being a rule follower. But you're creating the rules to get you to your health, right? It's like you follow a map, not because you're going to get a prize for following this road. You're going to get to your destination, right? There's no perfect map follower law rule. I don't know what it was. Award. That's the word I'm looking for, right? And so ultimately, I just want to put it in your ear that you need to start, if you haven't already, internalizing, like seeing what you're doing, evaluate what you're doing, and understanding why you're doing it. And then you can make case-by-case decisions about what you're doing and how and when and why. Here's an example that's not keto. When I was early in my, when I was in my 30s, I don't even remember when, the older I get, the more time blurs, but I was in my 30s, and I was doing a fairly restrictive way of eating, where there was a food list, and you couldn't eat anything that wasn't on the food list. And on the food list were peaches. But if you know me, you know that I cannot handle peaches. I love the flavor, I love the smell, I love the inside. The skin drives me up the wall and down the other side. I can't bite into it. It's too much. I can do cooked peaches, and granted, peaches aren't, generally a very keto food. They're a little high in sugar, but I'm giving an example of, just so you have an example of a different diet, right? But I love nectarines. That skin doesn't bother me. It's not fuzzy. And so now I'm making everyone crave these fruits. Sorry about that. And so I went to somebody in charge and I was like, well, why can I have peaches, but I can't have nectarines? Could you explain it to me? And the answer was, well, It's not on the list. And I was like, yes, I get that it's not on the list, but why isn't it on the list? Is there a scientific reason it's not on the list? Is there do nectarines have more sugar? Like, what's the reason it's not on the list? Because if it's just that somebody forgot to put it on the list, I would like to know, and maybe we could add it to the list. And the people couldn't explain to me why it wasn't on there. And ultimately, I should have realized that very day that this approach and I were destined to fail. Similarly, when I first started keto, I did follow some rigid rules around, like, if sugar is listed at all in the ingredients, it can't be eaten because, XYZ, but I would eat this because it was okay, but all these people said that other food was okay. And then, when I started looking into the details of how does it actually impact my body, how do I feel after I eat it, some things that somebody else said, I don't suggest people eat that. I was like, I think I can tolerate that, but something else that everyone said, well, that's great. Go ahead. It says it's keto. It's totally keto. I was like, I don't do so well with that, right? So feel free to use crutches. Feel free to borrow somebody. I mean, I am a coach. I am crutches, right? Like, my job is to support people when they need that support, when they can't 100% stand up on their own 2 feet by themselves. But my ultimate goal is to get them out the other side, walking, running, doing amazing things, because they now know what's right for them, or they know how to evaluate what is right for them at the time. And so I just wanted to put it out there that it makes me sad when I see people who've been doing keto for years and years and years still sort of relying on other people to make their health decisions. And that's not to say that we don't talk to other people or lean on other people. My analogy is falling apart. But, I talk to my doctor about things. If I'm like, I don't know about this, and I'm having some thoughts about this, that, back and forth, I might talk to other keto people about how they've handled things or what they've done, or what do they think about this ingredient? Is there any research? But I'm going to start to look for actual studies, and I'm going to start to, dive really deep if I really have a question, because my future is too important to leave up to a food list that some person I don't know created and put on the internet. Like I said, they can be a good place to start, but ultimately my earlier life experience should show me that food lists eventually will fail me if I don't believe in the underpinning, if I don't understand the why and understand the how. So I wanted to put this out there today to really encourage all of you to start to become your own health expert. Know what works for you, know what doesn't work for you, and know why. And I'd like to say, if you don't know how to do that, don't feel bad, because most of us don't know how to do that, and that's why we're here. There are many steps you can start to take, and I'm trying to make this podcast include some of those things. I have a course called Keto Unstuck. That's one option that you could do to learn a lot more about how your body works, because we go through that. It's specifically for people who find that keto in the form they've been following it might not be working exactly as they had hoped, and they're looking to unstick something that's stuck. So that's one option, and you can find that on my website. There's also a ton of free resources on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram, here on my Facebook group, Keto Life Support, on this podcast. So that's great. And then the next thing I would say is that start reading more things, not just keto books, not just keto information, but general health information. It can be very illuminating to hear from other people and things that they might be interested in talking about, and other perspectives, because the wider your perspective can get, the better tools you'll have for making good decisions. So I hope you enjoyed this quick episode. We'll be back next week with another episode. And like I said, my Keto Unstuck program, if you're listening to this, it is enrolling now. So you only have a couple of days if you listen to this. And if you miss it, you can sign up for the wait list, so no problem, and hop in the next round. All right, take care, everybody. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.